Channel 4, the local station. This is an election 2016 special, the state attorney debate. For the first time in 8 years, Northeast Florida voters are getting ready to make a choice about the area's top prosecutor. The incumbent state attorney Angela Corey has gained national attention, prosecuting several high-profile cases, which have also made her a lightning rod for criticism. Now, 2 of her former prosecutors are challenging her, saying it's time for a change. Tonight, all 3 make their case, not to a jury, but to the voters. Now, from the campus of Jacksonville University, your moderator, Channel 4's Kent Justice.
And good evening and welcome to the 2016 State Attorney Debate. Florida's primary, August 30th, so that's just 2 weeks away, and that's when registered Republicans will make their choice in the primary in this contested race. So for the next hour, those of you watching at home and here in the audience at Swisher Theater at Jacksonville University, you're going to hear from the 3 candidates in the race. We're going to introduce those candidates in a moment. First, here is Rick Mullaney, director of JU's Public Policy Institute.
Good evening, and welcome to Jacksonville University. With 120 prosecutors, over 350 employees, a more than $25 million budget each year, and prosecuting cases ranging from simple misdemeanors to the death penalty, the State Attorney's Office for the 4th Judicial Circuit of Florida is one of the most important prosecutors' offices in the state. Tonight's debate, co-hosted by Channel 4 and the Jacksonville University Public Policy Institute, gives you the opportunity to hear directly from the candidates who seek to serve as state attorney for the 4th Judicial Circuit, which includes Duval, Clay, and Nassau counties. At the Public Policy Institute, we believe that your vote matters, and we hope tonight's debate will be informative and help you in casting your vote. On behalf of Jacksonville University, we'd like to thank the candidates for their participation, Channel 4 for televising tonight's debate, and all of you for watching. We hope you enjoyed the debate, and welcome to Jacksonville University.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Rick. And now let's welcome our 3 Republican candidates for state attorney to our stage. And in alphabetical order, they are Angela Corey, Melissa Nelson, and Wes White. So our audience has been instructed tonight that was the big chance to cheer and get behind their candidates, and now they're gonna be good. And watch the debate and listen to the answers here. Our candidates will soon make their opening statements, and then we'll begin our questions tonight. Each candidate, as it goes, has 60 seconds to respond to my initial question, and then 30-second rebuttals will be allowed by each candidate on each question. At any time, I can ask follow-up questions and can limit the time for some of those responses. I can also limit some questions to 30-second responses only at my discretion. During the debate tonight, we're going to let the candidates know how much time they have through some colored paddles. 30 seconds left, 15 seconds left, and then when the time is up, they'll see a different color there. So 1 hour ago, we drew numbers out of a hat to determine the order for opening statements, as well as to determine who gets to answer the first question and who will deliver the first closing statement tonight. Each candidate will have 1 minute for their opening statement, and because of that drawing an hour ago, we begin with Wesley White. Mr. White?
Ronald Reagan once said that there are no easy answers, but there are simple answers. We must have the courage to do what is morally right. My name is Wes White, and I share in that belief. I also believe in God and country, law and order, the Second Amendment, due process, the right to privacy, freedom of speech, and I also believe that you have the fundamental, absolute right to live your life free of crime. Throughout my life, I've always raised my voice in the pursuit of justice when others have remained silent. I have led, I've been challenged, and I've always done so with a firm heart, firm hand. I'm pleased to be here tonight, and I appreciate your being here, and I commend you, and I ask that you give your full attention to what's going to happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. White. Ms. Nelson is next with her opening statement.
Thank you, Kent. I'm Melissa Nelson. I'm a mother, and I care very much for this community where my husband and I are raising our 3 children. I'm a lawyer, and I care about our Constitution. I'm a former prosecutor, and I care about our criminal justice system. That's why I'm running. From our criminal justice system and from our state attorney, we deserve accountability, integrity, and fairness. Unfortunately, over the last 8 years, the decisions, actions, rhetoric, and explanations of Angela Corey have eroded our community's confidence in our justice system. Her record of overcharging, her reputation for retribution, her self-dealing, and political tricks have all contributed to this loss of trust, and we must restore it. This race is not about political and union endorsements, nor is it about statistics that have failed to make us any safer. This race is about what we deserve, and we deserve better.
Thank you, Ms. Nelson. Ms. Corey, your opening statement, please.
Thank you, Kent. Actually, this race is about 3 things. One is experience. 34 and a half years as a prosecutor, board certified, an expert in homicide cases, and also teaching the Constitution to police and prosecutors for the last 3 decades. It allows them to make better cases and honor due process rights. It's also about our record. When I took over this office from Harry Shorstein, it was 19th out of the 20 circuits. And through my sheer hard work and determination, we've brought it into the top 5. That's based on objective standards. And then, of course, it's about the endorsements, because our endorsements are stellar. We have more than 30 from the people you have elected to serve your community, from senators, from the sheriffs, and especially from the brave men and women of law enforcement who run into the danger and then trust me and my office to carry it through to justice. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Corey. We now begin our questioning, and based on the drawing earlier, Angela Corey, you'll get to answer first here. We want to talk first about murder cases. Unfortunately, for more than 25 years, Jacksonville has held this unfortunate title of murder capital, that is, of the state of Florida, with the highest per capita murder rate in the state. So a few questions here. The first one to you, Ms. Corey. We know you're all prosecutors, but specifically, what experience do you have with the investigation and prosecution of murder cases, and what would you do to reduce per capita murder rate in Jacksonville?
Well, again, Kent, I am board certified in criminal trial law from the sheer number of homicide cases I've tried, well over 65. I've also been supervising all the homicides that we've tried, and I've tried 5 myself in the last 5 years. But the teaching also helps with that. Understanding the law, knowing what to teach law enforcement officers. We make better cases. It's why we've been able to send more violent criminals, violent murderers to prison. The state attorney's office can't prevent murders, but we can certainly make sure that once someone commits a murder, that they don't get out early, and that we handle each case the way it should be handled appropriately. Now, quite frankly, under Mr. Shorstein, the homicide rates reached as high as 150 or more. We have not seen that high of a rate in the last 8 years. And when we had extra police officers on the street, our homicide rate actually went down. Tough prosecution, good law enforcement, working with the good men and women of law enforcement is what keeps this community safe.
Thank you, Ms. Corey. Ms. Nelson, your response.
This is the truth of the matter. Duval County leads the state of Florida in murders. We lead the nation. We are 56% more likely to have violent crime in this community than across the nation. My parents' house is for sale in Tallahassee, and they are not moving to this city where they were born and raised because of the crime rate. I disagree with Angela Corey that the state attorney can do nothing to prevent crime. In fact, I think that's part of why the problem that we see ourselves in today. The state attorney has a very unique platform from which to partner with resources in addition to law enforcement to, in fact, impact crime in a way that makes us safer. You heard in the opening statement that she claims that she has statistics and improved the office by number of trial and number of conviction. But folks, there's a difference between being active and being effective. And the reality is, these statistics that she touts have made us no safer.
All right, thank you, Ms. Nelson. Ms. Corey, I'm going to give you a chance to respond in a moment. Let me hear, Mr. White, your response to that question, please.
My first case as a prosecutor was a first-degree murder case that had ended in a hung jury before. I brought that verdict home, a conviction, within 3 hours. The problem, and we haven't covered it yet, is twofold. First of all, we are not putting repeat offenders away. We see people over and over again that commit 10 or more felonies before they finally take that final step and take someone's life. We are also not dealing with the gang and drug trafficking problem that exists in Northeast Florida. We know that gangs will be accountable for approximately 100 murders this year in Jacksonville. We know that drug trafficking deaths and deaths related to that, approximately 300. But we have not focused on that. And we have simply forgotten what else we need to do, and that is we need to instill direction and discipline in our children from a young age so that we can communicate to them that they must abide by the law. And I will do that as your state attorney.
Thank you, Mr. White. Ms. Corey, would you like to respond?
I would. These statistics don't lie. They're based on the statistics that every clerk's office in the state of Florida sends to the state. And those statistics prove that through changing policy and being tough on crime, which I was elected to do, and I will not apologize for being tough on the violent criminals who are preying on this community. Through being tough on them, we have sent more people to state prison and put more people on death row than any other circuit in the state of Florida when you combine those two things.
All right, thank you, Ms. Corey. Ms. Nelson, the next question is to you. Let's talk specifically about death penalty cases. How many cases have you tried, start to finish, with what results? So, for instance, have you been lead counsel, sat the jury, made closing arguments, got a conviction, and put someone on death row?
In death penalty cases, I've tried over 70 jury trials. I've prosecuted, investigated multiple death penalty cases and tried from start to finish through death to 2 cases. There's 2 people currently on death row that I prosecuted. Let me say this: seeking the death penalty is the most serious undertaking of the state attorney's office. It's the most serious obligation of the state attorney, and it must be taken very seriously. So Ken, I've had experience both in being the second chair and first chair in death cases and handling death cases. And I can assure the folks listening tonight that when elected as state attorney, I will treat notices of intent to seek the death penalty as the most serious decision of the office.
Thank you, Ms. Nelson. Mr. White?
Kent, I've litigated cases ranging from civil rights violations to the imposition of the death penalty. Most of my practice has been in the civil world, where I have fought cases against companies such as IBM, people where the lawyers stand to make hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. Believe me, they are the toughest lawyers in the world to deal with. To be specific with regard to your question, I believe I've tried 4 murder cases. The last case was the case of Gregory Larkin, who brutally beat his parents to death with a baseball bat because they told him he had to get out to work and get out of the house. Mr. Larkin went to death row, where he, fortunately, took his own life, which was the first decent thing that young man probably ever did. You know, the issue with regard to the death penalty is a sidestep. The issue is whether we can manage and litigate the cases that we have in front of us. And I tell you this, I can litigate those cases, and I can manage them effectively. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. White. Ms. Corey?
Well, as I said, I've tried well over 60 homicides and supervised many others. I've taught murder, justifiable use of deadly force, and other pertinent topics to prosecutors and police officers all across this country. As I said, it is my area of expertise. So the way you approach these cases is the way our law requires. When it comes to the death penalty, we analyze everything. The filing of the death notice actually gets done to trigger a discovery requirement. But after that, it's our obligation to weigh the aggravating factors and the mitigating factors and then make the best decision based on that. But I can certainly tell you, I will never waive the death penalty on a serial killer who confessed to killing 5 people and terrorized this community. Thank you.
May I respond?
Thank you. She didn't invoke your name, but I believe we're going to come to that topic a little bit later, if that's acceptable. I do want just a 30-second response from each of you, and Ms. Nelson, if you can start there. How do you feel about the death penalty? And obviously, we've said it's serious. How do you feel about, do you believe in, that's the way to go in certain cases?
As I said before, it's the most serious undertaking of the state attorney. The death penalty is the law in the state of Florida, and it is reserved for the most heinous, atrocious, and cruel homicides that we see. It is used according to statute, and it is the law in the state of Florida. As your state attorney, I pledge that I will follow the rule of law. I have the experience. And one thing as to the question of how many death penalty cases we've had or how many people have been put on death row. Something important for the voters to recognize today is that that statistic has not translated in public safety for all of us.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Mr. White?
Generally, the death penalty is not cost effective. There is a cottage industry of lawyers who make a lot of money off of prosecuting appeals. And also, given the time that it takes from conviction to the time of the execution of an individual, it simply does not make sense. But there are cases, particularly those cases where someone has sworn that they will kill again, whether they are in prison or outside prison, that we simply must exercise that right to seek someone's life. And also in cases involving our children, we need to be able to pursue the death penalty in those cases as well.
Thank you, Mr. White. Ms. Corey?
It's the rule of the state of Florida, the will of the people of this state, that the death penalty be imposed in certain circumstances. Again, it's based on the nature of the crime itself, how heinous the murder was, aggravating circumstances and mitigating circumstances, and we engage in that weighing process on every single first-degree murder case.
Thank you, Ms. Corey. I want to turn our attention to criminal justice reform. This is a question for each of you, beginning with Mr. White. And each of you will have 60 seconds for your answer here before we go forward. So across the country, tensions are high in the criminal justice system, nationally in particular. There have been serious allegations of excessive force by police officers against African Americans causing their death. Some of these allegations have given the rise to the Black Lives Matter movement. In addition, just yesterday, Nassau County deputies arrested a man charged with killing a Central Georgia police officer. And police officers have been targeted. They've been executed, as occurred in Dallas and New Orleans. This has contributed to what some call the Blue Lives Matter movement. Some believe the criminal justice system is in need of serious reform and that racial tensions are at historic highs. So the first part of this question, Mr. White, do you believe there's a need for criminal justice reform nationally and locally? And if not, why not?
Kent, there's a pervasive feeling that the criminal justice system is rigged, it is unfair, and is unjust. And African Americans are the ones who typically feel that unjustness more keenly than anyone else. I do believe there needs to be criminal justice reform, but it's not just in the courtroom. It needs to take place in the boardroom and in the schoolroom, and we need to teach our children to conform themselves to the rule of law. And the matter of fact is, we need to tell our children that all lives matter. I reject the politics of division that exists in this country right now. I believe we need to set forth a moral value that applies to everyone, not just to a group, not just to a color. And I will do just that, and I will stand up against those who will use the Black Lives Matter to foster their own particular interest.
Thank you, Mr. White. Ms. Corey.
Just as our teachers are the symbol of authority in every classroom, our law enforcement officers are the symbol of authority on the street, and they must be obeyed. They must be obeyed because they are here to protect every single one of us. Blue lives matter because all lives matter. They are the only line of defense that we have, and they do on a local level what our military does on a global level to protect us. So we must honor those in authority, and we must continue to train and teach children at an early age accountability and respect for those in authority. And it starts in the classroom, it starts in the home, and then it should carry through to lives. We do everything we can to give seminars, to speak to students, to speak to special interest groups and any others who are interested in learning more about how the criminal justice system operates. And we will continue to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Corey. Ms. Nelson.
I think the question was about criminal justice reform. Absolutely, Blue Lives Matter. They are our last line of defense, and we are witnessing a horrific attack on law enforcement throughout this country. But the question as to reform, and should we engage in reform, conservatives are actually leading the discussion, the national discussion right now about criminal justice reform. We know what we're doing is simply not sustainable. And so what does that reform look like, and what does it mean? It starts first with instilling trust and restoring confidence in the criminal justice system. That is top down. It starts with electing a state attorney who will serve your interests always over her own interests, who incrementally, case by case, will build trust. It is the state attorney's office using a platform to partner with nonprofit resources in the community to use those resources and that funding so that resources of the state attorney's office can be focused on attacking, solving, and addressing violent crime.
Thank you very much. 30 seconds to each of you on this, and Ms. Corey, you'll start first here for me, please. Seems like we observe younger and younger suspects here. Gang members recruited in middle school, for instance. Sheriff Williams talked about this. We've seen teens murder. Just last week we saw that locally. How do you approach that? By putting all juveniles in jail, or are there juvenile interventions that work? What's the solution?
Well, you approach it the way we have since I started my career in 1981. You do it on a case-by-case basis. And unfortunately, we've had two 12-year-olds, several 13-year-olds, and a 14-year-old who have committed vicious murders. And we've had to handle each one of those cases differently. We don't direct file them to turn them into little adults. We put them into the adult system to give ourselves a wider range of options so we can look for treatment if it's necessary, any rehabilitation that's necessary, and also the most important factor, protecting this community.
Thank you. Ms. Nelson, 30 seconds.
I've said this before. I had the privilege, I can only speak from my own experience, as to knowing how this state attorney's office treats juveniles. Every case should be treated by a case-by-case basis. But I had the privilege of representing Christian Fernandez. And what I know from that case is that the state attorney's office was not interested in getting to the right result. As your state attorney in addressing juvenile crime, I will be committed to finding the right result for our community.
Thank you, Ms. Nelson. Mr. White, 30 seconds.
Once again, the issue is not so much what happens once the crime is committed. The issue is more about what we do as a society in dealing with our children. Our children lack direction and discipline, and they don't even know they lack it. And if they did know it, they wouldn't know where to look for it. I don't blame them, I blame us, because we have failed to lead. We have failed to teach morality and ethics. We have failed to teach God and country. And until we do that, there'll be no solution to the juvenile justice problem.
Thank you, Mr. White, Ms. Nelson, Ms. Corey. So that's the opening round. That's the tip of the iceberg tonight. Stay with us. We're going to have more questions for our candidates as we continue our Election 2016 special, the State Attorney's Debate. We continue in 2 more minutes.
Where is Jacksonville University? It's where you're surrounded by beauty. It's where you can expect excellence. It's where you choose the path that suits you. It's where opportunity is attainable. It's where outcomes are the focus. Jacksonville University is a premier private college in Northeast Florida. For 80 years, we have helped students reach their potential and achieve long-term success. Jacksonville University. You could be here.
I'm Charlie Kofer. I've worked 39 years in courtrooms like this, as a private attorney, as a public defender, and 17 years as a judge. Like you, I've watched Matt Shirk embarrass the public defender's office and our community with his scandals. So I stepped down as a judge in order to make that office and our courts work better for you. As your public defender, I'll restore integrity and experience to the office.
Vote Charlie Kofer for public defender. Angela Corey claims she's tough. The record says something different. Corey dropped carjacking charges against this man who went back on the street. With the freedom provided by Angela Corey's failure, he committed another robbery and murder. While Corey lets killers go free, she's also left hundreds of rape evidence kits untested. Tests that could help put away rapists who target our sisters and daughters. Angela Corey isn't tough. She's just another politician we can't trust.
Anyone can investigate, but the local station cares enough to make Jacksonville a better place to live.
Have you reported it? It looks like you work for the city. Have you reported it?
Investigative stories that make a difference.
Do you believe they're helping veterans?
When others give up, we get answers.
Do you think that money would have been better spent on those families?
The I-Team on News 4 Jax. Uncovering, exposing, getting results.
And welcome back to our Election 2016 special, the State Attorney Debate from the campus of Jacksonville University. We have more questions for our 3 candidates, Angela Corey, Melissa Nelson, and Wes White. And based on where we left off, our next question will begin with Ms. Nelson. So let's talk about closing out the primary. This concerns the write-in candidate issue, closing the primary to just Republicans due to a write-in candidate, Mr. Kenny Lay. So although it's allowed by Florida law, do you think it serves the people of the 4th Judicial Circuit well to have so many unable to vote in this election due to a write-in candidate? Ms. Nelson.
Thank you, Kent. I've been a Republican since I was 18 years old, and I'm proud to run in a conservative race. The question is not whether it's legal. The question is, was it's right? I don't know why Ms. Corey, who is running on her record, did not want to bring her record to all of the families of the 4th Circuit. But the bigger problem than just closing the primary is that your chief law enforcement officer has yet to this day to be accountable for the actions of her campaign. That trick in and of itself underscores the necessity of my candidacy. This chief law enforcement officer employed a legal but dirty political trick, and to this day has denied accountability for it. I pledge to the voters, if elected as your state attorney, I will never close an election. I will represent all of the families of the 4th Circuit. Every day, I will wake up committed to employing strategies that make each of you safer.
All right, Mr. White, and then we'll get to Ms. Corey in a moment. What do you think about this?
The politics of division in this country are alive and well, and they proceed on a daily basis in every political race, in every corner of this country. Politics is a nasty game. I know. I've been the subject of it. But I can tell you this. I believe the state attorney's race should be a nonpartisan race. And I commit to you that, God willing, should I be elected, I will change my party affiliation to NPA, no party affiliation, so that everyone will always be allowed to vote. I don't trust Tallahassee. I don't entrust entrenched politicians to change the law. So instead, it's up to us to lead, and I will lead. And I look forward to the race and the time when everyone can vote for their state attorney without concern of party, without concern of machinations, with the idea of simply electing the person who is the most competent to run our county. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. White. Ms. Corey?
That all being said, to call what our Supreme Court has given great thought to in 17 years of this occurring in the state of Florida, the Supreme Court declared it legal, and I think it's disrespectful to call it a dirty political trick, but it certainly suits this person's agenda because she wanted liberals to vote in a primary. The Supreme Court said we have parties for a reason, and that primaries exist for a reason, and it's actually Democrats who created this Supreme Court case decision, and it's a very thorough and detailed decision. So that's the way the law is in the state of Florida, and that's how it is. And we don't get to vote as a Republican. I don't get to vote in Democratic primaries, and I don't complain about that.
So, Ms. Corey, let me ask a follow-up. So, about 440,000 registered voters in Duval, Clay, and Nassau counties can't vote because they are Democrats or have no party affiliation. Hearing what you just said, what's your direct message to them on that topic?
My direct message to you all is that for the last 34 and a half years, I have worked tirelessly day and night. I have stood over the bodies of dead persons, hugged victims, given mitigation to defendants, and never once asked what their political party was. The job of the state attorney is to enforce the laws of the state of Florida. It's what I've done, and it's what I'll continue to do.
Right.
Thank you.
Ms. Nelson and Mr. White, I want you to weigh in on this. The other side of that is 320,000 registered Republicans in the 4th Judicial Circuit. Should they alone choose which of you get to be the next state attorney in our area? Ms. Nelson?
Ken, I want to respond to something that Angela Corey just said. Make no mistake, I have not complained once about running a race in a Republican primary. What I think is an issue to all of the voters that all should be concerned about is the excuses you just heard here and still no ownership. That's the problem. That's what should concern you. I have not once complained about the race I'm running at all. I am proud to be a Republican. I am proud to be a conservative. The fact is, we didn't employ this trick. Your chief law enforcement officer did. For what? To benefit her. And tonight, still tonight, being asked this question, she has yet to own the trick she employed.
Ms. Nelson, I want to get to Mr. White. I'm sorry, Ms. Corey, I'm going to let you address that in a second. Mr. White, what's your feeling on this? And then I need to ask her a question.
Well, clearly, once again, everyone should have the right to vote for their state attorney. But in point of fact, we did have that right. Everyone had that right. What they needed to do was simply go down to the supervisor of elections office and change their registration, as thousands and thousands of people have done. And hopefully those people will vote for me, because I have expressed myself constantly. I've expressed myself constantly that we need to provide a system of justice that's open and fair and that is responsive and inclusive. And I will continue that message. I believe that what happened was unfortunate, but it happens all the time. And I don't know whether or not Ms. Corey is telling the truth. She says she wasn't involved. Ms. Nelson says she's a liar. Well, I'm not going to go that far. I'm simply going to tell you that it will not happen again should I be your state attorney. Everyone will have the right to vote.
Thank you, Mr. White. Ms. Corey? Ms. Corey, so maybe it's just a yes or no answer. Did you or your campaign orchestrate this write-in candidate so that the primary was closed?
As has been stated over and over again, I did not. My campaign manager did drive paperwork over to Tallahassee for the write-in candidate. I have said that before, and I've never wavered from that. And that is taking accountability for what happened. A group of people who thought it was the right thing to do based on that Supreme Court decision thought it was the appropriate thing to do. I took action after my campaign manager got himself involved. He's a wonderful young man. He thought he was doing the right thing for the right reason. I will not fault him, nor will I continue to name call as these other candidates are doing. Again, it was the Democrats who created the state of the case law in the state of Florida. That's who appealed it to the Supreme Court, and that's why this rule of law, it's not called a political trick, it's called the rule of law. That's why it exists.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Nelson, your name was mentioned by Mr. White. Do you want to weigh in one more time, and then we're going to move on?
We can move on.
You don't have to. Okay. Thank you. One of the areas that each of you has talked about being important, and I think is important for our viewers as well, is about your experience and your management ability. So this question is not about your opponents, it's about you. Each of you have 60 seconds to answer this question. State Attorney's Office has, as you know, over 100 prosecutors, a budget of over $25 million a year, and last year took in over 14,500 felony cases, more than 46,000 misdemeanor cases, and over 6,500 juvenile cases. Clearly, the 4th Judicial Circuit, comprised of Duval, Clay, and Nassau counties, is one of the largest, the busiest in the state of Florida. So please tell us, what in your experience qualifies you to manage an office of this size? And I believe our first question here, Mr. White, you get to answer first.
Ken, thank you. My whole life has been dedicated to the pursuit of law and justice and truth. And I have followed that dedication in the civil world and in the criminal world. As the director of the State Attorney's Office in Nassau County, I was in charge of a group of lawyers. We had an average case count of 800 cases a day. And we handled each one of those cases with professionalism, with pride, and dedication to the community. And I dare say that when people walked out of the courthouse, whether they walked out in shackles or whether they walked out with a briefcase or they were a witness, they felt like that they were treated fairly and that justice has been served. My experience has been wide-ranging, from the courtrooms in Atlanta, Georgia to Key West, Florida, from Tallahassee to Tampa. And I don't think that that experience can be matched by either one of these two candidates on this podium today. Those cases have involved millions upon millions of dollars. In fact, one of the last cases I tried in private practice was against a French billionaire who called me a brigand. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. White. Ms. Corey.
Well, as I said earlier, having run this office for the last 8 years, our record speaks for itself. The objective measures had Harry Shorstein's office 19th out of the 20 circuits, 19th at the bottom for years and years. The Jack's journey said that's got to stop. So I studied it, I analyzed it, and based on my years of experience, sheer hard work and determination, and working with law enforcement, not against them as Shorstein did, we turned it around, and now we're in the top 5. bringing our office as high as 3rd in the critical categories. The conviction rate is critical, the clearance rate is critical. I got rid of a worthless check program that put innocent people, black and white, Hispanic, old and young, that locked them up until they paid their fines and then the cases were dropped. It's my experience that allowed me to turn that conviction rate around and to continue to put the worst of the worst in prison.
Thank you, Ms. Corey. Ms. Nelson.
This is a question about leadership. If anybody has a question about my leadership, obviously I'm younger than both of my opponents. I ask you to look at my entry into this race. It was well considered, it was thoughtful, prayerful, and bold. And with that step of courage, look at what has happened. Our campaign has caught fire. People have joined us. And most importantly, not just the financial support, not the grassroots support, but most importantly, almost 60 prosecutors who worked under this leadership have joined my campaign. They have contributed to me. They have gone out on Saturdays and knocked on doors, and that is because they realize that the leadership that is in the state attorney's office has failed. These are the people that are in the courtrooms, working in the criminal justice system, and understands how important judgment and fairness is in the criminal justice system. And these prosecutors, former assistant state attorneys, former federal prosecutors, and former United States attorneys have joined my campaign because we need a change.
Thank you. Folks, we're going to ask some individual questions here. Each of you will get a chance to address your comments on that. Ms. Corey, it's by virtue of where we're at. I'm going to start with you. USA Today ran an article in September 3 years ago with the headline, "Zimmerman Prosecutor Takes Hit in Court of Public Opinion." It detailed complaints about your prosecution of George Zimmerman, even accused you of overcharging by filing second-degree murder charges. Zimmerman was acquitted in the case, and knowing what you know now, would you handle things any differently? And if yes, maybe expand on that for us.
Kent, when the governor assigned that case to me, and trust me, I said we were too busy for it, but when the governor says you're going to take a conflict case, you take it. I assigned it to my 2 top homicide prosecutors. They made the decisions and I approved them. We don't overcharge by filing second-degree murder. We're required to file the highest charge we believe we can prove. Someone even said, well, why did you come in at the last minute and file manslaughter? And we said, but manslaughter's a necessarily lesser included. Ken, I think the entire problem right now with the criminal justice system, it's become a vicarious spectator sport, and people who don't understand the very complicated nature of our laws and that everything they hear in the media goes through a filter called the rules of evidence and may never reach a jury's ears. We don't believe there should be that much publicity on any given case. We've tried hundreds of cases with similar fact patterns. We've gotten guilty verdicts, we've gotten hung juries, we've gotten not guilties. The question is, why was that case so high profile?
All right, thank you, Ms. Corey. 30 seconds to respond to that, and I guess how would you have handled that case differently?
It is ironic to hear tonight that Ms. Corey is distraught with the publicity surrounding that case, when after that case she held a press conference and said the reason that they charged George Zimmerman was for the public. It is the obligation of a prosecutor never to bring a case unless the evidence supports a reasonable probability of conviction. To abdicate your duties for public consumption is offensive. But the problem was the behavior after the jury verdict. This was on national television. Our state attorney disrespected the jury, the judicial process, and their verdict by continuing.
Thank you. That's time. I'm sorry, 30 seconds. Ms. Corey, do you want to respond to that?
I do want to respond to that. Ms. Nelson's going to have to prove her last statement. I never said we filed this case for anything other than the right reason. So I'm expecting proof on that claim that she just made. I said all along, in the beginning when we filed this case and afterwards, that we believed we could prove it was Trayvon Martin screaming. But the point is this: it's a case like thousands of other cases that go to trial every day in a courtroom. I believe because the media stirred things up before Angela Corey was ever even in that case, that's why it was controversial.
All right, thank you.
Ken,
you'll have a moment to rebut that as well. And we haven't given you a chance to respond to the initial question. How would you have handled that case any differently? Would you have even filed there?
Well, the first thing I would have done is I would have taken it to a grand jury. I believe in the grand jury system. I believe that too many times we skip it. I believe that the people have a right to know what's going on. They have a right to determine whether they believe that probable cause exists to bring an indictment. And I think we need to listen to them. And I also think that we failed to engage in the dialogue that we needed to do with regard to the Zimmerman case. We should have talked about whether young people should be out at night. We should have talked about whether somebody with a gun who was not trained should be following young people at night. But we failed to do that, and we divided our country.
Thank you, Mr. White. Ms. Nelson, would you like the last word since Ms. Corey mentioned you? Would you like the last word on this? Ms. Corey mentioned your name?
No.
Okay, thank you very much.
Well, actually, I'm sorry, because I was challenged about whether or not the statement is true.
Correct.
I'm referring to a press conference that this state attorney held after the verdict, in which she said she thought their office believed it was important for the public to watch this trial unfold. My point is simply this. It is the obligation of the prosecutor only to bring charges for which they believe the evidence will turn a reasonable probability of conviction. That is the obligation of the prosecutor. Politics have no role in those decisions.
All right, thank you very much, and thank you for those answers, candidates. We are going to take another break here, but we've got more questions for you, and we've got more information in their responses coming our way. So our Election 2016 special, the State Attorney's Debate, continues in 2 more minutes.
So do you wonder every morning, how am I going to get it all done today?
We know life is crazy.
Worries about crime, the latest scams, and ripoffs.
Will time-saver traffic alerts mess up my commute?
We're here to get you all that important news and information, but also give you a great start to your day.
The Morning Show on Channel 4 makes mornings happen.
And when you have to leave the house, we're still with you. Right here. That's all of us. How'd I get in there?
Angela Corey claims she's tough. The record says something different. Corey dropped carjacking charges against this man who went back on the street. With the freedom provided by Angela Corey's failure, he committed another robbery and murder. While Corey lets killers go free, she's also left hundreds of rape evidence kits untested. Tests that could help put away rapists who target our sisters and daughters. Angela Corey isn't tough. She's just another politician we can't trust.
In the race for our public defender, voters have a clear choice.
There's Matt Shirk, who abused his position as public defender with sexual misconduct, broken laws, destruction of public records, and waste of taxpayers' money. A grand jury said Shirk should resign, and the Ethics Commission found he violated ethics laws. Then there's Republican Charlie Cofer, who served our justice system honorably as a judge for 17 years.
The choice is clear. Join me in supporting Charlie Cofer for public defender.
How important is breaking news to you?
I want to know what I need to do to keep myself and my family safe.
We have a crime and safety analyst that we turn to. It's good to hear from somebody like that, so that way you know that it's an expert.
Channel 4 app, and I get those push notifications. I know when she's on lockdown before she even texts me.
That was something that I found out very quickly.
Y'all always on the cutting edge of everything. The breaking news, I love to watch it.
And welcome back to our Election 2016 special, the State Attorney's Debate from the campus of Jacksonville University. We've got more questions tonight for you for our 3 candidates, Angela Corey, Melissa Nelson, and Wes White. So we're going to start in this section with a personal question for you, Ms. Nelson. Wes White has stated that your support is from the criminal defense bar and wealthy donors, that Angela Corey's support is from law enforcement, and that he's the only one not beholding to specific groups or donors. How would you respond to that? Is Mr. White correct?
No, he's not. In fact, I am so proud of the incredible support that our campaign has generated. It is humbling, and I am honored. I am supported by people of all walks of life, and in fact, in just 3 short months, we have more individual donors than have given to both of my opponents in over a year and a half. That is not about me. That's a testament that our community is desiring a change. In fact, both the professions, the socioeconomic status, the interests of the people who support me is far and wide. And I also would reject that law enforcement is only supporting Angela Corey. The union has given her its endorsement. I have deep and wide support among law enforcement, among people I worked cases with, and people that know how my work ethic is and my judgment. I am proud about the support that we have, and I think it's a testament about what I bring to the table and the fact that the community wants a change.
Thank you, Ms. Nelson. Mr. White, 30 seconds to respond to that.
I agree with Ms. Nelson. It's not about her. It's about the criminal defense bar. It's about the wealthy. It's about the press who believe that we the people need to be led, that we the people are too ignorant and foolish to determine what we want to do with our lives. I disagree with that fundamentally. I don't want to turn back the clock and bring back the criminal defense bar and Harry Shorstein to the state attorney's office. I want we the people to dictate where we are going to go from this point forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. White. Ms. Corey?
Well, our endorsements to me speak the loudest, as well as the sheer number of donors and the support that we have from all over the community. But our endorsements come from our senators, from other elected officials, from former Mayor John Delaney, who wrote an amazing letter telling you why you should support me, from Rick Hartley, the former chair of the Republican Party, who also wrote a letter. And what they've said is a lot of voters are being misled by the media. Study the facts, and that's what I'm asking you to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Corey. Mr. White, this question directed to you first, 60 seconds for your response, and then 30 seconds for each of the remaining candidates. Now, Mr. White, you accused Ms. Nelson's campaign of trying to strong-arm you out of the campaign. July 25th, that is, demanding a grand jury investigation with a letter sent to Ms. Corey's office. Ms. Corey recused herself, and then a special investigator, the state attorney in the 8th Judicial Circuit, looked into your request yesterday. He concluded, here's a quote from his response, "I can find no violation of the election code by the Nelson campaign and without probable cause, therefore I will not proceed." Mr. White, do you owe Ms. Nelson an apology?
I do not. I mentioned just a moment ago how there are factions in our community, in the legal community, and in the wealth-driven community that believe that they need to control elections. You know, when 10 men are willing to put up $500,000 to buy an election, what they want to do is they want to ensure it's a sure thing. And what they try to do is they try to force me out of the race. Now, the fact of the matter is, Mr. Savone said that that's not a violation of law, and it's not a violation of law. But what it is, it's politics, the dirtiest kind of politics that I have ever seen in my life. And it simply should not be tolerated, and I guarantee that they won't do it again. Thank you.
Mr. White. Ms. Corey, your response? Ms. Corey, would you like to weigh in?
I wasn't there when these two were cozying up together and plotting against me. So I don't know what they said in their little email fest with each other, and I don't know what was said in that room. What I do know is that we've done everything out in the open. We're proud of our campaign, and I did my job by recusing, not just on this case, Kent, but I had 2 other elections complaints and had to recuse on those as well. So I have nothing to do with their little whatever it is.
So, Ms. Nelson?
Does Wes White owe me an apology?
There you go.
The answer to that is yes. His allegations were categorically false, and they were found as such without any merit at all by Bill Servone. It's a shame that he and the state attorney wasted the resources of this state, of the governor's office and of another circuit state attorney's office in order to deem these allegations meritless. But important for you to know, while Ms. Corey recused herself, she then immediately, in alliance with Mr. White, used his allegations for political gain in her hit ad.
Thank you. I bet we want to talk about that, don't we? So she mentioned both Ms. Corey and Mr. White there. So, Mr. White, you go first. Ms. Corey, you'll be next.
Thank you.
Make no mistake, there are political thugs that run our community. They fly in jets. They live in million-dollar or multi-million-dollar houses. And they have invested in Ms. Nelson because they want to control the criminal justice system. And I will not stand for it. I will not apologize for bringing it to the surface. You needed to know. You do know. And again, it will not happen again.
Mr. White, do you want to name names there? Do you want to call anyone out? Because perhaps they'd like to respond. I'll move on. I won't put you on the spot. Ms. Corey?
Again, it's sad that Ms. Nelson doesn't know the law. I'm required to recuse when someone makes a complaint. I am the state attorney for the 4th Judicial Circuit. It had nothing to do with political action between me and Mr. White. Now, if Ms. Nelson wants to talk about attack ads, I can tell you that it was calculated for her to take those several donors and get as much money because they couldn't talk about my record, so they had to put out false attack ads. And it's the only way they apparently know how to do business. But we're going to win this election through sheer hard work.
Thank you, Ms. Corey. So I want to talk a little bit about attack ads because so many people who don't know you as candidates see the attack ads or they see advertisements, and this is one that has come up. Ms. Corey and Mr. White both seem to be on this issue of the monster of Mayport. This is a PAC that's getting some help apparently from Mr. White. He used a Facebook post, I understand, to circulate a web page pointing to that. Here's the story. The monster of Mayport is this case referred to from back in 2003 when William Wells killed 5. As I understand, he pleaded guilty. He was given 5 consecutive life sentences, no parole in 2004, but then in 2008 killed a fellow inmate. Ms. Corey, why don't you start there? Why is that Melissa Nelson's fault?
Well, it's the judgment Ms. Nelson failed to use on one of her few homicides where she was first chair. The decision to waive the death penalty, as she stated earlier, is one of the most important, and I have never seen a case like that where the death penalty was waived, knowing that a man who said, if you don't put me on death row, I will kill again, was put in general population, and not only stabbed someone and almost killed them, but then did actually kill again. When someone tells you you're going to kill again, that they are going to kill again, you have to do everything in your power to isolate them on death row, which is where a serial killer belongs.
Ms. Nelson?
Not surprising that Ms. Corey in her attack ad failed to let the voters know that she was my supervisor when I handled that case. In fact, in not one, but in 2 separate evaluations, she gives me a perfect score for litigation, and she references my management of that homicide. She also failed to let the voters know that it was Ms. Corey who assisted me in hiring the forensic psychiatrist who gave us our opinions. That attack ad, which she leads the viewer to believe that I let somebody off the hook, she also fails to tell you that because of my efforts, William Wells will never walk this earth again among you all. He was sentenced to 5 consecutive life sentences because of the work that I did and that she applauded. But those are convenient facts that she chose to omit in putting her ad out so that you are not fully informed. As to the ads we've put out, you had a question about that?
Thank you. That's time for that. Mr. White, you need to respond. Ms. Corey, I see that you've been named. I'll get to you in a moment.
We've just seen a case where Ms. Nelson refuses to own what she did. She refuses to admit her responsibility. And even worse than that, she has shown what I believe is moral bankruptcy by saying that it didn't matter, this guy didn't walk amongst you, he walked amongst prisoners. I want to tell you, the prisoner that was killed had a 10-year sentence. He deserved to be able to get out and lead his life again. So whether you want to put relative worth on a prisoner's life or someone out in public, the issue is this. There was a hard decision to be made, and Ms. Nelson and Harry Shorstein took the path of least resistance, and someone died as a result, and someone else was almost killed. And before he's finally executed, before he's tried again, he may kill again. And that lays directly at the feet of Ms. Nelson.
All right. So, Ms. Corey, and maybe in the course of your rebuttal here, explain to me why that is a prosecutor's fault and not the blame laying on to the Department of Corrections.
It was an error in her judgment, and it was ratified by Harry Shorstein, who's her biggest supporter now. She knows I was not her homicide supervisor. Everybody that knows the state attorney's office knows I was her supervisor over gun cases, and she had a supervisor who gave her in her own words, directions on who to talk to in that case. My name appears one time when I had to cover a depot because she didn't show up. And in the middle of the depot, I had to turn it back over to her because I had my own work to do. The record speaks for itself.
Thank you, Ms. Corey. Ms. Nelson.
Thank you. When making decisions regarding sentencing, the victim's sentiment and their desire is of the utmost importance. Another thing that Ms. Corey has not told you is that the victims' families in that case asked the state attorney's office to sentence William Wells to life sentences, 5 consecutive life sentences. I have always stood with victims. I have always given reverence and respect to their wishes, and I did so in this case. And I take issue with the idea that Ms. Corey, her name only appears once. In fact, there's emails showing she was involved in this case. She was my supervisor. I look to her for guidance. She's not on the paper, the document.
I'm sorry, that's time. Thank you. And that is time for candidates to make your closing statement. So if you'd prepare for that, each of you have 1 minute for this closing statement. And as determined by our random drawing beforehand, we begin with you, Ms. Nelson.
Thank you. 20 years ago, I became a prosecutor because I wanted to make a difference. And today, I'm running to become your state attorney for the very same reason. I come to this race with sincere motivation and earnest intention. And that matters because it differentiates me from both of my opponents. Angela Corey is seeking a 3rd term to retain power that she has abused at your tax dollars. She has tripled her wealth, a millionaire, by taking your tax dollars from her operating budget, money that could be used to make you safer. Wes White admitted last week he needs a job. I am asking for your vote. I want to serve you. I have the character, the experience, the conviction, and the will to be the state attorney you deserve.
Thank you, Ms. Nelson. Wes White. Wes White, your closing statement.
The storm clouds are gathering across our community and across our country. It is not the time for a weak-willed, soft-hearted state attorney. It's someone who believes in justice and believes in law and order and is willing to go that extra mile to achieve it. This race is about the future of Jacksonville. If you are pleased with Ms. Corey and the way things are, you vote for her, but I would suggest that you're wrong. If you believe that Harry Shorstein should get a second chance into the state attorney's office in the form of Melissa Nelson, and that the criminal defense lawyers should once again roam the halls of the state attorney's office and play let's make a deal, then you vote for Ms. Nelson. But I again assure you that you are wrong. But if you want a future that is positive, that will take us into the next decade, then I ask for your vote. I will not disappoint you. I will uphold the law. I will represent you, not the wealthy. And I appreciate your vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. White. Angela Corey, your closing statement tonight.
Ms. Nelson continues to speak of character, but there is a permanent public record of her abuses of a grand jury in Flagler County. It is a public record by a judge who heard testimony and said she abused the entire process. I am running for another term because I have the experience. I have the endorsements. I've been teaching the Constitution, and I've tried more cases than these two will ever try. I am a board-certified trial lawyer who has run this office by implementing good policy that's brought us out of the bottom of the 20 circuits into the top. I have 10 or more lawyers who have returned, who worked for me and then wanted to come back because they love this job. They love this job the way I love this job. And the people who know best, those in law enforcement, our first responders, they want me to stay here. Vote for law enforcement. Vote for Angela Corey. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Corey. And thanks to each of our candidates. That concludes our state attorney debate. Remember, Only registered Republicans will be able to vote in this primary. But tomorrow night, we invite you to join us again at 8 o'clock, the first of 2 congressional debates. It will feature the top 4 Republican candidates in the 4th Congressional District. Then Thursday night, join us for a debate that is featuring the 3 Democrats running in the 5th Congressional District. Both debates shown live on Channel 4 and on news4jax.com. Thank you.